Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Tonight we're going to start out with Vito Babe Parilli, who died recently at the age of 87. Babe Parilli was a quarterback from the cradle of quarterbacks, Western Pennsylvania, same place as Johnny Unitas, Dan Marino, Joe Namath, Joe Montana. He had a superb college career at Kentucky under Bear Bryant, including the 1950 Kentucky team that lost one game and then defeated undefeated Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl. They went on to play in two more bowls in his next 2 years, and he finished high in the Heisman voting both times. Here he talks a little bit about it.
Vito, what's the biggest change jumping from college ball into professional football? I imagine the biggest change is getting used to receivers in your backs. First thing I noticed is throwing the football to a back, you have to hit him at the right time. And as far as a quarterback's concerned, I'd say that's one of the biggest. Well, Vito, you've played a lot of football in your day, high school football at Rochester, Pennsylvania, college ball at the University of Kentucky, and, of course, professional football with the Green Bay Packers and now the Cleveland Browns. What do you consider your biggest thrill? Well, in college, Ed, probably my biggest thrill was playing in three successive bowl games in 3 years at the University of Kentucky there. Just playing pro football is a thrill to me, Ed.
Well, he was drafted by my Packers, and for 2 years he played backup to Tobin Rote, and then for 2 years he played backup to Bart Starr. He had an undistinguished career with the Packers, although he had one moment of note. He threw the winning pass in the first game at Landau Field, then City Stadium, against who else? The Bears. He bounced around for a couple years, but made his name professionally in the AFL with the Boston Patriots. He was one of their great quarterbacks in the days before Tom Brady. He made the New England Patriot Hall of Fame. He had two great seasons in 61 and 62, and then was the league's comeback player of the year in 1966, where he fell just short of taking the Patriots to the Super Bowl. You should recognize some names from this game.
In the beginning, most of the experts said they couldn't do it. But now, in a showdown at New York's Shea Stadium, the Patriots face the always tough New York Jets with a chance to win the Eastern Crown. With a title game and Super Bowl waiting beyond, the Pats need only a win or a tie today to make it. Field General Babe Parilli was chosen as the comeback player of the year for his 1966 performance. The Patriots have great respect for Joe Namath and his golden arm as he continues to improve with experience and demonstrate qualities of start. Babe Parilli has the Boston offense rolling full steam ahead as he opens the scoring with a bomb that lands in the waiting arms of Gino Cappelletti, the league's leading scorer. While the Jets continue to dominate play, Mike Hollaback outlines offensive strategy with Art Graham and Babe Parilli. The Patriots still try to come back as Babe Parilli uncorks a long pass to Larry Garrett. Joe Bellino is split wide and Jimmy Whalen is in tight as Babe Parilli goes for the payoff. His pass is in Whalen's direction and Jim has it for the Patriots' second touchdown. Babe Parilli has no choice but to keep pitching in the final period with the Patriots trailing 31-13. Two-point conversion from Parilli to Capadonna brings the Patriots to within 10. They trail 31-21. But it's too late. And in their best performance of the season, the Jets knocked the Patriots out of the race.
Ironically, Babe Parilli did get a Super Bowl ring. He was Joe Namath's backup in Super Bowl III. We're going to move on to Martin Landau, who died recently at the age of 89. Nice Jewish boy from Brooklyn, James Madison High. He was a great actor. Here's how good he was. In 1955, there were 2,000 applicants for the actor's studio, and only 2 were selected, Martin Landau and Steve McQueen. He bounced around doing various roles on television, got his big break in 1959 in North by Northwest. He played Leonard, the gay accomplice to James Mason. Here he explains how Hitchcock gave him the role.
I arrived there. He personally took me through several offices and showed me the entire movie, storyboarded on the walls. Literally from the first cut to the very end where Leonard flies off. I was amazed, really, because he saw me in a play in which I played a character that was 180 degrees, totally different. At the time I was having tea with him and Peggy Robertson, his very behaviorish assistant. I said, how did you see me in that role? And cast me in this. And he said, Martin, you have a circus going on inside. And obviously, if you can do that part in the theater, you could do this little trinket.
Well, the ironic thing is it didn't lead to too much for Martin Landau until about 5 years later when he was offered the role of Spock in the new television series Star Trek, and he turned it down. Didn't want to play a monosyllabic character. He opted for a role in Mission Impossible instead. It looked like the better thing at the time. He played Roland Hand in Mission Impossible, and it was the more successful television series, but no one could have anticipated the popularity of Spock in the future. Here Martin Landau talks about his role in Mission Impossible.
You were yourself to start with, and then you dressed up and played other characters, older, younger, different dialects, German. Ach so, you play a German.
I will receive them now.
Next week, a Russian fellow who talks like this, or gangster, hey, Charlie, you never know what the heck you're going to be singing and how you're going to say it, you know what I mean? So it gave you a kind of field day as an actor.
He started in that for 3 years with his wife, Barbara Bain, who was really nice looking, and after a contract dispute, he left the show to be replaced by, that's right, Leonard Nimoy. He was typecast for a long time, did a lot of dreck. After 36 years, he divorced Barbara Bain, started going with a hot new blonde for a while, and then he got the role playing Bela Lugosi in Tim Burton's Ed Wood.
Home, I have no home. Haunted, despised, living like an animal. The jungle is my home, but I shall show the world that I can be its master. I shall perfect my own race of people. A race of atomic supermen that will conquer the world!
He won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for that, beating some pretty good performances.
Samuel L. Jackson, Pulp Fiction, Martin Landau, and Ed Wood, Chaz Palminteri, and Bullets Over Broadway, Paul Schofield, and Quiz Show, Gary Sinise, and Forrest Gump, and the Oscar goes to Martin Landau and Ed Wood.
I talked to Tim Burton today in New York, and I want to finish the conversation. Thanks, Tim, for giving me the part of my life. Little Kates, don't put music on, because if it's a Mission Impossible theme, I'll get very angry.
And Sid wanted me to make Martin Landau the feature. I didn't, but I will include him as a villain in Columbo. He played Norman Paris and his brother Dexter, and here's Dexter hosting a cooking show with Columbo before Columbo nails him.
Too much pepper, I think. Oh, I'm terribly sorry, Lieutenant, but that's not fateful music. Yes, you gorgeous gaggle of gals out there, it's time to say goodbye for today. And remember, when the husband comes home tonight, let him know what the wonderful eating can do for the marriage. This is Dexter Paris saying, bye-bye, ladies. See you tomorrow.
Martin Landau, a great actor. Well, we're going to move on to our feature tonight, George Romero, who died recently at the age of 77. He was a director who directed one of the great film horror classics of all time, a movie that spawned an entire genre by itself, the zombie movie. Most of these new zombie movies are dreck, but the 1968 Night of the Living Dead was a true classic. No big stars. It was shot on a shoestring budget in black and white, the greatest movie ever shot in Pittsburgh. George Romero got some of his training from Mr. Rogers. It started out as a late-night campus movie, and then it caught on. He did a couple of spin-offs, Dawn of the Dead and a couple other zombie movies, but nothing ever rivaled The Night of the Living Dead. Here George Romero talks about the movie, his training, the racial implications of the movie, and his expertise on zombies.
I actually started to make films when I was 14 years old with an uncle's 8mm camera. 8mm, not Super 8. I love genre stuff always. The easiest thing to do was sort of a little monster movie, so I made a movie called The Man from the Meteor, because all I needed was a mask for this guy. That was it. He wore jeans otherwise. I don't know where they bought jeans on whatever, planet Krypton, but I went to Pittsburgh to go to college. And everyone in Pittsburgh who wound up somehow working professionally in movies or film or television all started on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He hired me to shoot the remote stuff. Basically, it was little films that they would show. I did Mr. Rogers Gets a Tonsillectomy. To this day, the scariest film I ever made. And he was the first guy that really sort of let me have final cut and trusted me enough to do that. He was the sweetest man in the world. I guess the original idea for Night of the Living Dead was basically inspired by a Richard Matheson novel called I Am Legend. Richard actually jokes with me about saying that I stole his idea. And I keep saying, no, my guys aren't vampires. They certainly aren't vampires. They're not even zombies. Zombies, to me, were those boys in the Caribbean who, do the wet work for Lugosi. And I thought I was creating a completely new monster. You know, the neighbors suddenly turned into flesh eaters, ghouls. That's what I called them, ghouls in the film. And I thought they were completely new. What I really was saying, which I didn't articulate until the second film, was when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. And that was actually the tagline for the second film, when I finally gave up and decided to call them zombies. I thought it was some sort of punishment, something was happening that was beyond our understanding. I felt that it didn't matter at all. What should matter is that this extraordinary thing is happening, and people are still arguing about upstairs, downstairs, who's the boss, still arguing about their own agendas instead of facing the problem. And that's really what all of my zombie films have been about. It was almost completely self-funded. 10 of us started a company called Image 10. We put in $600 a piece. And on that $6,000, we started to shoot. We actually started to shoot without all the money to finish the film. Once we had some footage that we could show to people, invited investors, and we'd show them the footage, and they said, wow, that's pretty cool. The lips move in sync with the sound. That's called a movie. That's basically what happened. When investors came in, $3,000, $5,000 at a pop. That was it. We were shooting film, which is very expensive. In those days, every city the size of Pittsburgh had film laboratories because the news was on film. I mean, that's where really I learned to use the pencil. Hanging out with these guys that were shooting the news and editing it together with glue, cigarettes burning over the glue pot, which was flammable. And I would take these newsreels out and bicycle them to, that's how I earned my keep, to bicycle them to the stations around town. There were 3 film labs, and one of them actually did everything from 8mm to 35. We did night in 35mm plus X. A lot of people think it was 16mm because the initial prints were, I think, printed on toilet paper. So it was, grainy, almost indecipherable. But I want that rusty, dusty look. It's not Night of the Living Dead without that. Dwayne Jones, the actor who played Ben, was very concerned, and almost the only one who was concerned about his being African American. We were going, hey, come on, man, it's 1968. We're all past all of that. Little did we know, when we made the first print of the movie, and we were driving it to New York to show it to potential distributors, we heard driving in the car. One of the producers, Russ Striner, and I heard the news on the radio that Martin Luther King had been assassinated. Now, all of a sudden, it became a black film. Even though when Jack Russo and I wrote the script, the character in the script, we assumed him to be white. When Dwayne agreed to play the role, we didn't change the script. The same things would have happened to him if the actor had been white. The fact that these redneck posse guys shot him, that became racial instead of just a mistaken identity, which is really what we intended. I think that's one of the reasons that people believe to this day that it's important. And in a certain way, it was a mistake. Zombies cannot run. I say this definitively, as the grandfather or the godfather of zombies. Zombies cannot run. So anyone who has a zombie running, don't listen to that person. Their ankles would snap. I mean, what did they do? Go and join a spa the moment they rose from the dead? Give me a break. They're dead.
Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, The Depths, and as a final tribute to George Romero, I thought we'd have a song sung by zombies, not real zombies, but the great 1960s British group led by the vocalist Colin Blunstone and the keyboardist Rod Argent. These guys were incredibly underrated, should have done better than they did. I had trouble picking out my favorite song. I didn't want to go with something like She's Not There. I finally settled on one of the greatest, if not the greatest, American song written by George Gershwin. We've used it before. To pay tribute to George Romero, this is the Zombies' superb version of Summertime.
It's summertime and living is easy. The bills are jumping and the cotton is high. Your dad is rich and your mama's good looking. Won't you hush, pretty baby, don't you cry.